The best thing about being a woman is the prerogative to have a little fun, yeah. Oh, 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 I'm so like crazy. Get them later. Measure short skirts. Oh, 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 running around to feel the way I feel. Man, I feel like a woman. Don't, no, 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 no. You want to join me in? That's Carmela in the background, y'all. She's singing. Hi, guys. Welcome back to Save Black Girl Reads, where I am your host, Ariel, the best friend in your head that you never knew that you needed, but you are so glad that you have. Welcome back to week 7 of Becoming by Michelle Obama. And in this week, we are going over chapters 19, 20, and 21. And guess what that means? This is our almost last week of the book. This is the second to the last week, the runner up, if you will. So we are actually preparing to wind down out of the book. And she has shared a lot of her tidbits with us. So let's just go ahead and get started. Here we go. Jumping into chapter 19, I think chapter 19 really spoke to a lot of transitions going from Chicago to the White House, right? At this point, this is like one of the majorest transitions that Michelle Obama has now faced. And in this chapter, her main concerns that she actually draws out of the chapter have been the transition for her daughters and the fact that she wanted to create some type of sense of normalcy for them in the midst of all of this change. And so she's like working diligently to try to, working with the schools, working with the Secret Services. And now she's in this space of trying to convince her mother to also come aboard and move into the White House with her. So a lot of the changes that she highlighted included the security and the safety around her family that has now been made priority by way of Secret Service agents, the staff. And on 288, she actually details it and she says, I was now married to one of the most heavily guarded human beings on earth. It was simultaneously relieving and stressing and distressing. And so it's a lot, obviously. And she also details on pages 292 and 293 how it feels for her like living in the bubble. And she talks about how all movements are first require a discussion by the security team and the scheduling team, and how she found it odd being in this bubble because it kind of took away from a lot of the fun that they used to have, a lot of the places that they used to go, even to the point of how painful it was for your former president to not even be able to escort his daughters to school on their first day of school, going from Chicago to Washington. The fact that he knew that his motorcade would be too much and it would just cause way too much attention. And they already had enough Secret Service agents going as it was. And now the girls would also be, followed by with Secret Service agents that would park themselves outside of their classroom windows and other things. So she talked about how this was so much. But one thing that she found solace in was the kindness and the sweetness around the previous administration and other first ladies sharing their wisdom with her about what they did in their role, and also sharing their wisdom, also having their daughters share their wisdom with their girls, because her daughters are also pretty young. They're still in grade school and also trying to figure the things out. Michelle Obama also spoke to the inauguration. she details it from the perspective of actually being involved in it, actually seeing the things up close and actually attending it and actually participating in it, holding the Abraham Lincoln's Bible, while her husband has his hand on that Bible and he's his other hand up and he's giving the oath. Like, we all watched it, but she gives us a lot of the details from it. She talks about her family being there. She talks about the kids, her kids playing with Biden's grandkids. She talks about how Barack Obama made it a strong point to invite the Tuskegee Airmen to the inauguration, and how they also, how he also made it a point to invite the Little Rock Nine as well. And I thought, and it was for that reason that he was like, for their audaciousness and their willingness to really test the precedents of Brown versus the Board of Education is his idea, and really what gave him the audacity to believe that he could actually, walk the steps of, walk the hallways of the White House and actually become president. And so he actually invited both parties, the Tuskegee Airmen, because obviously, World War II, they were very pivotal, but still came back and weren't really thought of as heroes because they were Black. And to give that type of notoriety to the inauguration, I thought was really just like, it was chef's kiss. Another thing about the inauguration that she detailed a lot was the fact that they started off with the ceremony that morning. Then there was the parade that they actually watched from the White House, and they had to stand there and watch it, the bands playing, the color guards, or whoever else was involved. Then after the parades, they had to go decompress. And she talks about, sitting, decompressing, getting ready so that she can now move into the space of the balls, all of the different balls that they had to actually attend. And she talks about how Beyonce is singing Etta James is At Last. She talks about wearing her white inaugural ball gown, and how we thought that just because it was at one particular ballroom that it was highlighted, and that was just that one time that they did that dance. No, honey. She talks about how, friend, she went to multiple balls with her husband and they danced this dance. Then she talked about how, like, they had a ceremonial crew of family members and friends waiting on them at a different location in a different ball. And she's talking about how she's anticipating getting to that ball and anticipating celebrating with her friends. But friend, let me tell you, by the time she got to that ball, it was 2 a.m. And she was, you want to know what she was? A tired. She was a sleepy. She was a cannot go on. And so even though she anticipated all of this funness, even though she anticipated all of this space of like really taking time to celebrate with friends and families and those that she loved and those that she really wanted to spend time with, that was not the case. Instead, she was like, you know what I gotta do? I gotta go take this dress off. I gotta go take these shoes off, and I need to go to bed. That's what I need to do. And a lot of it was spun around the responsibility of the office as well, and the things that she knew needed to be done the following day, not just that evening. And I was like, wow. Because she went to bed. Her husband, on the other hand, at 2 a.m., he's still going. So he's shaking hands, kissing babies, and all of that jazz well into the wee hours of the morning, which is obviously, it is next day. It's 2 a.m. 12 o'clock hit 2 hours ago, and he's still going. But that was pretty much the wrap up and the sum up of chapter 19. It was okay. So now, moving into chapter 20. So in chapter 20, a lot of what she is addressing is now the movement into the White House actually living there. The dramatics of it seeming like a hotel, but it's also where they live, but it's also where they work. They brought a new meaning to work from home type of scenario and situation. But she talks about how, you know, having to be the first Black family and living above certain standards, like decorating the halls, decorating the house, required them not to required them, or, you know, that she and her husband had decided that they were not going to use the $100,000 budget of like the decoration team, but they were actually going to use their own money from Barack's proceeds from his book and things like that to actually decorate the house, because it was like they didn't want, being the first the first Blacks in the White House, they understood the standard of which they were walking in, and so they were just like, nope, everything on the up and up, nothing to be suspected, nothing to be scrutinized. We used our own money, we paid for things. And she kind of debunked a lot of the things that you would have thought with them living in the White House. The fact that they paid for, even though rent was free and utilities was free for them living in the White House, everything else was not, and they paid for it. Got an itemized bill at the end of every month, like every other citizen in America, and their bill was higher because guess what? They have a lot more in terms of, they have family. If family and friends are coming to stay, they are required to pay for those individuals as well. They got Michelin level chefs that are, you know, drumming up these new ideas for food and things of that nature. And guess who got to foot the bill if the food is expensive and got to be flown in? You got exotic food money. You got exotic sushi money. Cause listen, your first lady was out here like, you know what? I had to stay close because I had to watch the bills closely, because these chefs would hear my husband say, "Oh, I like that fruit," or "I like that sushi," and she said, "And we got the bill, and they done flew it in from somewhere." So she talks about like the transitions of the first few months and how it is something, and she's trying to maintain a level of normalcy. Again, that's one of the themes that we see in these next upcoming chapters. She's trying to maintain a level of normalcy in a very abnormal situation. So in this new role, Michelle Obama also talks about how she's now in charge of these new activities where she has to host these things like the governor's ball, like the Easter egg roll and things of that nature. And she's also trying at this moment, she's not ready to roll out an initiative yet, but she's thinking it through. She knows that she wants to roll out an initiative. She knows what she's promised on the campaign trails of, you know, doing more in terms of the initiatives for military wives and mothers, and doing more for the health around children, eating more vegetables, eating less fats and sugars and things of the likes. And so she talks about how her role as first lady, she wanted it to matter, and she described it on page 310 as, "I didn't want to be some sort of well-dressed ornament who showed up at parties and ribbon cuttings. I wanted to do things that were purposeful and lasting." And then that's how we know that she was still going to do this garden, but she knew that she had to be strategic about that as well. And one thing that I thought that I found that she tied into trying to get into a space of normalcy, knowing that there was a lack of diversity within government, within this job, and within this space. And she's also trying to get used to being in this house that has never had Black people in this house before. She actually talks about the people who are a part of the service staff, the people who come in and set the flowers, the people who go in and clean the toilets, the people who buttle, aka the butlers, the cooks, things of that nature. Most of them, quiet as is kept, that people don't like to talk about. Most of the service staff is Black and brown people. And she actually talks about how she gets to know or creates this level of familiarity because she can relate to the staff talking about the game. She can relate to the staff talking about their grandchildren and giving updates. And she saw the service staff as actual people, and she gave them that space and that time of day for it. And I thought that, this actually gives great space for what great leadership is, just by giving people the sense of having them understand that they are people even as they stand in this job, which could also give them greater pride because they are people standing in this job. One major event that she actually gives her side of that we see in this space, because I think even now that she's talking about being the first lady of the United States, she's been having a time with giving the background of what she's experienced from her perspective. And I absolutely love it, because I'm like, yeah, tell your story. She talks about and she addresses within like her first couple of months, it was a whole fiasco. It was like she didn't follow protocol. She attempted to touch the queen. It was, she doesn't know what she's doing. She's, just trying to sell her as uncouth, not knowing what she's doing. She doesn't belong, which she talked about that narrative already in a few chapters up. I want to say we discussed it last week. As it pertained to her. But essentially what we do see is that the First Lady Obama, it gives it from the background. She meets the Queen and her husband, the Prince, Queen Elizabeth II. This is prior to her going on to glory. We know she don't went on to glory. God bless. But this is while she's still alive. She's in her 80s at this point. She meets them. They have a lovely conversation. And then there's this whole shindig situation with the G20. And their wives are there. They're all there. They're bumping shoulders. Michelle Obama is talking about how she's meeting new people or these new dignitaries and their wives. She's trying not to say too much. She's trying not to overstep boundaries. She's trying not to forget anybody's name. And she's trying to remain associated with the things. But then she also says that she looks down and the Queen is standing next to her. She acknowledges her height. She knows that she's tall. They discuss that. But then the Queen looks down at her feet, and the Queen looks, they look down at both of their feet, and she's like, do your feet hurt? Like, how can you stand in those shoes? And essentially the hug or the touch came from an endearing moment between her and Queen Elizabeth II, where they are bonding over their feet hurting in some cute shoes, which what woman can't relate? You got on this cute shoe, you are wearing this shoe, you are working it, but as the evening goes on, honey, your feet start to talk back in those shoes if the shoe's not comfortable. That's pretty much what it was. They bonded and she hugged her, and towards the end of the chapter we learn about the work that it took to get the garden going. All of the meetings, the going back and forth with the people who are in charge of, the park and reservation services, the deciding how big the garden is going to be, where the garden is going to be located, who's going to be in charge of it, what things are going to be planted in it. I think just like the details and the months and weeks of planning before you even saw a stitch of a photo with her and those babies from the school planting anything or uprooting anything after it has been planted. Just know that it was a real labor of love, that she had to go back and forth about that garden because no one had implemented a garden, and she highlighted this, since Eleanor Roosevelt. Since the Eleanor, no one had a garden. But she pushed for it, and then she got it. And so I thought that, that was sweet. And she talks about just like the healing of that it was for her spirit to have those children there, and how and why she kept children around, because it was like a healing balm for her spirit, as she described it, because the bane of them being there was the politics for her. So that was pretty much chapter 20. In chapter 21, here is what we see. There is the evolution, the bigness of the change in chapter 19. There is the trying to figure out what's going on and trying to grasp a simple sense of what normalcy is going to look like now in this space. And chapter 21 is much more of the same, but also understanding that what you feel is normal about you, or what the Obamas feel is now normal about them, is now an inconvenience for others. Michelle Obama describes how her wanting to do simple things now has become a major inconvenience for others. She talks about how she's wanting to go and sit on the Truman balcony and just drink a cup of tea. But she realizes more often than not that she's not going to, simply because Secret Service, she has to have a conversation with Secret Service, and then they have to go shut down East Street, and they have to, just all of these different things. They have to plan and pretty much go through all of these different individuals about whether or not she can just go simply outside for 10-15 minutes to drink a cup of tea. Like, they've had an hour meeting about whether or not she can do it. So and she also realizes that as it pertains to a date night that she highlights within this chapter, is a date night where she and her husband, after 4 months of them being, of getting situated, they're in the White House, he's in the office, he's trying to do the things. They decide that they're going to have a date night, because a promise of their relationship is that they have date night every week, which I thought was like, kudos to them to still prioritize each other, even in the midst of all the craziness that's happening around the East and West Wing of this house. And so she talks about how they made this plan to go to New York for their date. And essentially it's dinner, and then they're going to an August Wilson show, which anybody else who could have done it would have been sweet. It would have been nice. It would have been just yes. But within now these dynamics of them being POTUS and FLOTUS, it is not that simple. And she details it on page 327. As we flew back to Washington late that night, I already knew it would be a long time before we did anything like this again. Barack's political opponents would criticize him for taking me to New York to see a show. The Republican Party would put out a press release before we'd even gotten home, saying that our date had been extravagant and costly to taxpayers, a message that would get picked up and debated on cable news. So here was the issue with the things, right? Here you have Michelle Obama and her husband, Barack Obama. POTUS and FLOTUS are who these people are at this time. They are just wanting to go on a simple date, or no, not even a simple date. They want to go to dinner and a movie, and they want to go to a nice dinner and a nice movie. In the space of doing so, she talks about the inconvenience of them having to shut down 6th Avenue. She talks about the inconvenience of them having to rearrange the restaurant, and now people who would have normally just come in, dined, been seated, and starting the ordering process with their waiter, they now have to be searched with a metal, they had to be searched before going to their seats. Same thing with the show, like a show that would have normally just allowed you to come in and enter and be seated, now has erected metal detectors. The show is starting literally 40 minutes later than expected, so that everyone can be searched and no one is is seen to be a danger to the continuation of the show by the president or the first lady while they're at this show wanting to just view something. And she realized at that time that it was going to be an inconvenience. And so she talks about how these changes of them being POTUS and FLOTUS are now really, just again, the normalcy, the simple things that they would want to do are now, things that could cause inconveniences for others. Like the fact that so in the space of, again, the garden is her initiative. She's really having a time. She talks about the work in chapter 20, but she also brings forward more of the work in chapter 21. And she actually talks about how the garden, even though she's doing the work of this garden, it has now presented this type of struggle between the Mary Tyler Moore versus Marian Robinson thing that she has going on in the book, because she talks about how the garden was popular and the garden was wholesome, but I also knew that for some people it wouldn't feel like enough. I understood that I was being watched with a certain kind of anticipation, especially by women, maybe especially by professional working women who wondered whether I buried my education and management experience to fold myself into some prescribed first lady pigeonhole, a place lined with tea leaves and pink linen. And so she talks about how, she doesn't want to be involved in politics, but she, again, it's this Mary Tyler Moore. I am a career woman. I know what I want to do. I want a life of purpose, and I don't want it to just be surrounded by a man and some children. But then she's also talking about the fact that I do have a man, I do have kids, and I need to be present for them. And so she talks about this struggle, even in the space of being the first lady of the United States and trying to roll out an initiative that she actually cares about, that she actually wants to do, that she feels purpose around and purpose driving her to do. And at the same time, the start of it is kind of looking like I got a lot of expectations and I don't know how people are going to take it, whether they're going to be cool or they're going to come out of a bag on me, because I don't want them thinking that I'm just trying to be like some woman, like she said, like she doesn't want to do. She doesn't just want to be an ornament. She doesn't want to be some ornament, but she also wants to do something that is purposeful for her. And I thought the first lady actually also addresses the fashion piece, the fact that, as she's starting to campaign for Barack on the campaign trails prior to him becoming the president of the United States, people started taking note of what she had on and who she's wearing and things of that nature. And she talks about how it actually was a burdensome piece for her because she gives speeches and she feels empowered and she's empowering others, other girls who look like her at the school in London. She's talking to these kids who look like her, up the street in Washington, D.C., and she's being moved and trying to choke back tears. And as soon as she comes off the platform of saying these things, or she's talking to these mothers these wives and mothers in the military and the impacts of what their spouse or what their kid being in the military does for them. And in the space of, again, she's in this space of having emotional moments, really purposeful moments that she feels like she's having. And the first thing that a reporter asks is, who is she wearing? She talks about that frustration, but she also talks about how she revamps it to be something that is more significant for her, that she knows that, okay, well, if I'm wearing this person or if I'm seen in this light, maybe I drum up the beauty and the style, but I also have the military mom in the picture with me who I can then, talk about and expose and give more of a poignancy around the causes and the purpose that I feel like I have. So she takes this and she uses this as a benefit to her, as opposed to it being a bane to why she actually wants to address some of the things that she wants to address. And I thought that it was brilliantly done. And she also highlighted how, even in the space of becoming this fashion icon that she is now, how even in that space, she had to walk a tightrope because, again, the first blacks of the things she talks about as a Black woman. 2, I knew I'd be criticized if I was perceived as being showy and high end, and I'd be criticized if I also was too casual. And I thought, man, the tightrope as the first Black as the first Black First Lady of the United States of America, she had to walk an extremely tightrope. And she even talked about how, even in the space of her walking that tightrope and introducing up and coming American designers who may not have had, a name for herself, she talked about how she pissed off this known designer who was known for doing everybody else's work. And he was mad because she wasn't wearing his clothes. She was wearing other up and coming designers' clothes. And she talked about how, just like she's paying these bills for everything else outside of rent and utilities at the White House, she's also paying for these clothes. Honey, I don't know if you knew that your first lady was out here footing the bill for these clothes and the images. And because again, she don't want you thinking that she's spending the taxpayer money in the space of coming out of a crash, of the housing crash in 2008. She was like, nope. What you're not gonna do is say that I didn't pay for the things. And if she did wear something that was a designer piece that she didn't pay for, she donated that to the National Archives Museum, where the documents are supposed to go that Donald Trump didn't want to send, and he instead took them to Mar-a-Lago. That museum, that's where she sent the dress, because she was like, this is how you were supposed to do the things. So yes. And I was like, let us know, because I don't think we didn't know if she was actually paying for these things. Come to find out, she's paying for her stuff, Sasha and Malia's stuff, and she was like, ain't nobody really tripping off of what Barack Obama was wearing. Again, in these spaces where she seems like, this superwoman, supermom, whatever, she actually is revealing behind the curtain, like, no, there is a team. I have a team that helps me. And I thoroughly appreciate her realness and her candidness around it, so that people can't really so that if there is like this whole superwoman-esque type of viewpoint that we look at her in, it's like, no, probably not. Like, myth debunked. She's not superwoman. She has help, and she accepts the help as she needs it. Last thing of chapter 21. She launches the Let's Move campaign in 2010. And I thought that the strategies and the work that she did behind it, the doing the focus groups, the meeting with the environmentalists, the talking with horticulturalists, the trying to get the understanding of the corporations and why they do the things, understanding that if she calls for something and she tries to go to battle with a corporation, she's also going to have to battle the farmer corn for the sugary substances that are in the food. She understands these things, and so she's trying to go from a humanistic approach as opposed to an accusatory approach. And she learns that she's like, I want to, and she's in her head, she's trying to make sure that she is meticulous about it, because what she doesn't want it to do is to reflect badly on her house, but she also wants an initiative that she is impassioned about. And so she does the focus groups to also understand Sam, the man who was cooking for her daughters and introducing her kids into vegetables, he's also a part of the team. He's also there making the initiative what it is. They're having these meetings with all these individuals, putting together what they're going to do. The fact that they are focusing on, and the one goal being addressing childhood obesity and how to get children to eat healthier, which is why she started the garden in the first place. That was like one of the first steps to the Let's Move initiative. And I thought that the work that she did, the research behind it, the conversations that she had was something that was just like, you could tell that all of the things that she did prior to, like the community organizing and community relations, the whether it was with public allies or with the University of Chicago Medical Center, or even just being like a summer associate mentor or advisor and things of that nature, like all of it all of it culminated into this space where she could actually utilize everything that she's been taught, all of the networking, all of the bridging the gaps, all of the let's create these volunteer opportunities. Let's try to get people to understand each other and to talk to one another who would never have in any other way talk to each other. I think all of that type of experience has now shown itself and come to fruition in this way, and I thought it was beautiful. And that's pretty much how she ended the chapter. So that was chapters 19, 20, and 21. Next week, guys, is our last week. Next week is week 8, our final week for Becoming by Michelle Obama. It has been a journey. I have thoroughly enjoyed it from start to finish. Michelle Obama is a beautiful writer, and the book has been it's been wonderful. But we are going to have to say goodbye. Never can say goodbye, girl. But we are going to have to say goodbye to this wonderful read, and I think and introduce who we are going to be reading next. But we are going to be reading While Justice Sleeps by the Stacey Abrams, who's currently running for governor in Georgia. That Stacey Abrams, she wrote this book. She wrote it and published it and released it in April of 2022. I don't know where I was. I guess I was under a rock, sis, but we are going to get into it because Black author, Save Black Girl reads, even though it's not a book about theology, even though it's not a book about salvation, it don't have nothing to do with the Bible. It don't have nothing to do with anybody's life story, anything to encourage you or anything. This is just willful reading because we need something else. We need something else. And I thought that this would be a good read for us. So listen. Okay, take a seat, friend, because I got to tell you the things. This book looks like, from the reviews and stuff, like the commentary of people who have been talking about this book, and even what I saw online, honey, this book is just like, it's given the things, because it's supposed to be like, it's like a political legal thriller, right? I don't understand how that's going to really come across, but it's already like the reviews were talking about how it's a plot twist in there and all the things. And listen, let me tell you, I'm here for thrillers just as long as they don't scare me halfway to death. And the things of the nature. So I don't know, because we've talked about this, and I've told y'all I am a child as it pertains to like movies and stuff like that, and I'm also an emotional reader. So, but we're gonna get through it. I checked through the book already, and it is 53 chapters. I know, sis. I know, bro. I know. Everybody. But hey, lean in. Everybody, calm down. Okay. We will get through this. We literally, that tickles me. It's an inside joke. But we have 3 more chapters of Becoming. And let me tell you how many pages we've done. Not including the acknowledgments, because I'm not reading those because I don't want to. Or maybe I will, and God bless it. But we are going to read the epilogue of the book. Once we finish chapters 22, 23, and 24, and we read the epilogue, which is what we're doing next week, we will have read 421 pages of this book, which is why it took us 8 weeks, guys. But this book is what? It's without the acknowledgments, granted, it is a little bit longer. It's 458 pages, but you've already done 421. So, hey, I don't want to hear it. Everybody calm down. Now, are we going to take another 8 weeks to read the book? I have yet to decide, because let me tell you, It is a feat trying to plan out books. I will say that, especially when you start talking about how many chapters they have and things of that nature. And also the attention span of your ability to actually sit down in a week and read a book, friend. So here's, and I don't want you to be overwhelmed in the reading that you are doing. But also, if the book is good, we're reading more than we're reading more than 3 chapters a week. I just want to prepare your heart and mind for that. That if anything, we may actually just start with 7 chapters. Hey, everybody, calm down. I went through and I looked at how many pages is 7 chapters, and it's not that many. But if we do the 4 week, if we go for 4 weeks, y'all reading 100 pages a chapter, okay? Or 100 pages a session, at least. Yeah, like 110 pages. So if that's the case, 110 pages, you might as well, it might be 7 chapters anyway. So everybody, hey, or 7 or 8, or maybe, I don't know. Because some of these chapters are short and some of them are longer. But I think that at the end of the day, I'm going to check out the pace of this book. And y'all will see how many chapters we go through, and then I can possibly map out the rest of the book from there. I don't have it for you yet, sis and bro. I'll get it for you though before, after the first week, but before the last one. Okay, so but I am excited to actually introduce a fiction read into our space. And as you guys already know, we'll also be starting Red Lip Theology for our other book after Marriage Be Hard. So that's where we're going, friend. That's the plan for what is it? We're in October. The plan going into leaving out of October, going into November, we will be on the Red Lip Theology and While Justice Sleeps by Stacey Abrams. And essentially, now again, friends, I know that I told you guys at the beginning and the inauguration of our of starting this channel that we would look at, we read Becoming because Michelle Obama's book, The Light We Carry, is also coming out November 15th. So I am aware of that. Yes, we are going to cover it as well. And I already have my wheels turning about it, and we will discuss it a little bit later. But as of right now, that's not your concern. Your concern is getting Stacey Abrams While Justice Sleeps, so we can find out what's going on in this political thriller. Okay, because that's what we're reading. Okay, we got it. Got it. Good. All right. Okay, friends, this has been a wonderful, like I said, this has been a wonderful read so far. Again, even in these 3 chapters, it has not been that difficult to read. It's been something where I've been tuned in and things of that nature. Again, Michelle Obama is a phenomenal reader, so you don't really recognize that you are really in a space of reading the 400 pages that you are, but you are reading the 400 pages. So again, congratulations to getting this far within the book. You are through week 4. I think the book says something like we're almost like 80 to 90% done. So congratulations to you. Pat yourself on the back. I'm proud of you. Again, next week, we are finishing up the book. So chapters 22, 23, and 24, plus the epilogue is what we're reading. If you want to read the acknowledgments, the bro or sis, I say go ahead. I don't know if that's going to be my ministry because God bless the people who she wants to acknowledge, but she's done a lot of acknowledging along the way. So I don't think I need to pause to do any more of that. Okay, so we have gotten through it. We are almost there. The finish line and the light at the end of the tunnel is upon us. So until next week, friends, we will do this all over again. I'll be seeing you, saints and ain'ts. Bye.